What's going on YouTube? It is NSouth, and today we're going to be doing another reaction. But before we get into it, I just want to let you guys know I don't care who you are, what you've been through, what you're into, or what you do. Jesus Christ loves you, and so do I. And with that being said, let's get into it. And today, we are going to be reacting to Could Elle Catch Epstein? This video is by a channel called Anime Addicts. I have never seen one of their videos before, but the thumbnail looked fire. This video also looks interesting to me, so we gonna watch this. If you're on YouTube, please check out the Twitch. If you're on Twitch, please check out the YouTube. Socials for all my socials. Link for all my socials is going to be in both bios. But with that being said, let's just get into it. Lock me in, turn me up.
It would take Elle less than 5 minutes to solve the Epstein case. And that's me being generous. Let me break down exactly why, and more importantly, how. Spoiler alert, I'm also going to bring up Light Yagami, so you absolutely need to watch till the end of the video. First, we'll power scale Elle to understand the depth of his genius. You see, in the world of Death Note, the three greatest detectives on Earth, Elle, Geraldo Coyle, and Deneuve, are actually all the same person. And this man has been at the top of the global investigation scene since he was only 8 years old, which is when he single-handedly prevented World War III. Now, the public record says he solved over 3,500 difficult cases, but the real number is significantly higher because of those alternate identities. To give you an idea of the scale he operates on, Mello, one of his successors, once mentioned that Elle maintains at least triple-digit active codes for various detective personas. Still, if you want the one intelligence feat that's relevant here, it's this. Back when his rogue successor, Beyond Birthday, created a crossword puzzle so complex that an entire team of policemen gave up on it, and even the elite FBI agent Naomi Misora thought it was designed to be impossible, Elle solved it instantly. And Beyond Birthday is not a fraud. He is the primary antagonist of the Los Angeles BB murder cases novel, and he's genius enough to act as Elle's evil clone. When he tried convincing Naomi that he was actually Elle, he read a 376-page book in under 5 minutes and memorized every page perfectly. Now, if he's pulling off feats like that...
That's crazy, yo. I can never understand how people could read these, like, big books in such short amount of times, especially not, like, in a day. If I was reading a 500-page book and I read it steadily over the course of some time, personally, it would probably take me about 2 weeks, give or take a few days, only because, like, that's a lot of reading to do. You know what I mean? Me personally, I don't have a problem with reading. It's just that, like, depending on, like, what I'm reading and, like, the story, like, I gotta get into the book. You know what I mean? My girlfriend loves reading, though. So, you know, like, it's different for everybody. But that's me personally, though. That's me personally.
And Elle is superior to him. You can imagine what Elle's photographic memory looks like. So when I say Elle can solve the Epstein case in 5 minutes, I'm not being hyperbolic. If anything, I'm being conservative. This man processes information faster than entire government investigative bureaus combined. He can monitor dozens of computer screens simultaneously and absorb every data point perfectly. And because he immediately understands every data point, he can weigh every probability in real time and calculate precise percentages in his head. But here's where it gets tricky. I'm sure that you can already tell that superhuman genius alone isn't enough to solve the Epstein problem. You see, Elle is a detective. Yes, he's the top one detective, but he's limited in what he can do. His whole thing is narrowing down suspects in closed systems. But how does that work with Epstein? The way Epstein operated has been well documented since at least 2005. The real problem was never a lack of evidence. It was that too many people in power were either compromised or complicit. Having said that, let's see how this actually plays out. The year is 2005, March 2005 to be precise. A stepmother contacts the Palm Beach police because her 14-year-old stepdaughter came home with $300 in cash. When she asked the girl about it, she ended up explaining the entire recruitment pipeline. Basically, a classmate had approached her at school and offered her money to give an older man a massage. The classmate drove her to a pink mansion.
No, I don't like that. She's an op. She's an op. She is an op. I don't like that at all. I do not like that at all.
At 358 El Brillo Way. Once in, Epstein entered wearing nothing but a towel, and I'll spare you the details, but to make a long story short, she walked away with $300. Now, at first, this looks like a case of a local rich pedo creep. Nothing about it suggests you're dealing with a man who has billion-dollar financial leverage, a global contract list, and 2 decades of cultivating relationships with presidents, royalty, and prosecutors. But by October 2005, Detective Rick Harry was interviewing victim after victim, and the pattern was was identical every single time. Girls would get recruited by their friends. They'd be driven to the same mansion, asked to give
up AI
time. Girls would get recruited by...
I think this pick is AI, and if so, why? That's the thing that'd be like, catch me off guard. How do people use AI pics when you could find a picture that looks exactly like this on the internet? 1,000,000,000% you can find a picture exactly like this somewhere online. You could find one on IG probably.
Their friends. They'd be driven to the same mansion, asked to give a massage, but as you can expect, it would often escalate to God knows what, and then they'd get money. And here's the thing, once a girl was in, she was in. She'd be pressured to bring more girls, which is how the network just kept expanding, and Epstein was particular about them.
And all of the girls that was like, hey, friend, you want to earn some money? Every single one of them is an op. I don't want to hear it. Every single one is an op, faux show.
Being young. So, okay, Recarey built his case methodically. He collected everything from property records proving Epstein owned the mansion, to flight logs showing travel between Palm Beach, New York, New Mexico, and Little St. James Island in the Caribbean. Not to mention witness statements describing the same housekeeper, the same recruitment methods, the same cash payments. He documented everything. By May 2006, Detective Joseph Recarey submitted a comprehensive probable cause affidavit to the Palm Beach County State Attorney's Office. It was the culmination of an 11-month investigation and clearly had overwhelming evidence for direct charges. But rather than filing charges based on Recarey's affidavit, State Attorney Barry Krischer took the case to a grand jury, and the grand jury returned a very limited indictment. And as we know, it ultimately led to the controversial 2008 non-prosecution agreement. Now, why am I bringing all this up? To show you just how much was known even back in 2005. Plus, for this scenario, we're going to assume Elle gets a chance to look at Recarey's affidavit in May 2006. We know the Death Note anime came out in October 2006, right? Well, even though the manga came out much earlier, for this scenario, let's just say that the main story of Death Note took place between 2006 and 2007. So this would be a few months before Light picks up the Death Note. And here is exactly how Elle solves it within 5 minutes. He goes through the affidavit, and immediately, within minutes, he solves the case. And I don't mean the way Recarey did. No. Elle goes much deeper. He connects the dots and realizes instantly that Epstein's ring is global. He sees that it implicates a stupid number of powerful people. We're talking billionaires, government officials, presidents, royalty, and more. Plus, Elle also figures out that Epstein is systematically collecting blackmail material on all of these powerful figures for a specific country that just popped up in everyone's head. Now, I'm not going to get too deep into specific names or the countries involved to keep things straightforward for the video, but basically, Elle realizes that by 2006, Epstein had already been operating for decades. Most importantly, he understands that Epstein currently holds more institutional power and protection than even he does. The #1 detective in the world. Naturally, this also confirms that the Department of Justice and the FBI he works as part of are compromised. This is where it stops being a detective case. You see, in Death Note, Elle commands Interpol, Japanese National Police, FBI liaisons, and the Kira Task Force. He has institutional authority, but that also means he needs the system to actually work with him. Now that same system is compromised and complicit, so if Elle plays by the rules, he'll get nowhere, which is why he has no choice but to take matters into his own hands. When the director of the FBI learns that Elle is looking into the files, Elle receives an invitation to Little St. James, the so-called Epstein Island. By this point, Epstein has owned this island for 7 years. Alright, what now? Elle is invited. And if you think that's stupid, and you're wondering why on earth Epstein would invite a potential threat like Elle to his private island, you have to keep in mind who we're dealing with. This is the same guy who was revealing every bit of information about what he does over Gmail, while most of you out here are using VPNs just to pirate some anime and games. Yes, elites aren't exactly high IQ. So once Epstein learns that the FBI's top detective is finally onto him, his first instinct is to simply invite the guy over. Of course, Elle knows exactly what the play is going to be, but he still goes ahead and accepts the invitation for 2 reasons. First, it's because even though he has a sense of morality and justice, his primary motivation is the desire to win, and because of that, he simply can't bring himself to back away from a challenge like this. Second, it's because he can tell exactly why Epstein would invite him in the first place. Now, from the looks of it, it's Watari who makes the trip while carrying a laptop with Elle connected via voice chat. The second Watari steps off the helicopter, Elle starts cataloging everything. He notices right away that the staff to guest ratio is crazy. So there are dozens of employees just for a handful of visitors. He sees sees how every single sightline is controlled, how the security cameras monitor every guest, and how the entire environment is designed for observation and control. Epstein gives him the tour, and then eventually offers Watari a drink. He accepts a glass of water, and after observing the glass for a split second through the screen, he takes a sip. They sit on the terrace, and at this point, Epstein just goes ahead and comes right out with what he's doing. He explains how he has the most powerful people in the world on camera, everyone from presidents and royalty to prime ministers, bankers, and scientists. Epstein leans forward, and
the video's dope. It's just the use of AI that's like...
As Elle sees the void in his eyes, he reveals that what he and his backers are ultimately seeking is control. Then Epstein extends his hand toward the laptop and offers Elle a chance to become an equal partner. He wants to use Elle's brain to help him expand his network so that they can eventually gain control of the entire world together. Elle remains completely calm while he processes Epstein's specific phrasing and body language through the feed. He can tell that Epstein actually believes this, and that he truly wants to be the invisible hand moving civilization. He can also see that Epstein isn't afraid of him at all. If anything, Epstein is actually excited by him. Now, Epstein was clearly expecting some kind of a big response here, but Elle stays completely quiet on the voice chat. Then Watari walks back to the table, picks up a few wrapped chocolates, and puts them in his pocket. He just says, "I'll take some for the flight if you don't mind." And with that, he asks a staff member to tell their helicopter pilot that they're ready to leave. The moment is so absurd and so deliberately anticlimactic that Epstein doesn't even know how to respond. He expects a negotiation or a rejection, or maybe even an acceptance. But in all the decades he has operated, he had never experienced a complete dismissal like this. He thought that since Elle already knew the truth, he could just offer him a partnership. But this is how it went? Little did Epstein know that the reason Elle didn't respond at the end was because the voice chat was actually a recording. I mean, did I mention that the helicopter pilot is actually Elle himself? He wanted to physically observe the island with his own eyes, so he tagged along disguised as the pilot. All the while his voice recording kept Epstein occupied.
I haven't talked much this reaction, which is crazy because usually in my reactions I'll talk a lot to try to keep y'all like wrapped in, but I am so dialed into like the analysis that's going on. I don't even care, bro. Like I'm dialed on this. Like, this is the first reaction I've been this dialed into in a minute, yo. In a minute. Like, for real, for real. I'm invested.
Next, as the helicopter takes off, Elle looks down at the compound, shrinking below him. Okay, what now? If the FBI director is already compromised, and if Epstein's influence extends across multiple countries, how is Elle going to defeat him? It's a problem, especially considering how the longer it takes, the more Epstein's influence is going to grow. Plus, you have to remember this is still 2006, which is well before what happened in 2008. Elle knows that he has to act right away, so he decides to go all in on the affidavit. He realizes he has to crack everything Epstein has built to neutralize that influence, and that includes making the truth mainstream as early as possible. In our world, it's taken until basically this year for the general public, especially in Western countries, to get a clear idea of what was really going on. But Elle needs to get it out within 20 hours, not 20 years. He starts by looking into potential journalists who might already be onto Epstein, and while he's reading through the Miami Herald, he finds Julie K. Brown. She's already doing exactly what he needs. In reality, she's the one who eventually got the former police chief and lead detective to talk publicly about how the case was sabotaged. And her series, Perversion of Justice, was what explained how Epstein secured that lenient plea deal in 2008. Okay, so Elle seeks her out immediately and shares everything he has learned with her. Now, Elle knows that journalists can only do so much. They publish, people read, and then what? Some victims might come forward, but many would be either too afraid or too deep into the system to go public. After all, Epstein reportedly used the phrase, "Those who help him will be compensated, and those who hurt him will be dealt with," to intimidate witnesses into staying quiet. What Elle really needs is to create an irreversible cascade of information that makes the truth impossible to contain. He begins gathering as much data as possible to build a web that includes all the records of flights on the Lolita Express, financial donations, and public photos. He makes notes on which individuals were likely there for business, as in financial or political leverage, and which were there for pleasure. Then, for every compromised official like the FBI director, Elle identifies a clean counterpart or a political rival who would love nothing more than to see that person burn. This is obviously easier said than done, and Elle needs help from hundreds of people like Reverie and Julie K. Brown, but once he has enough solid information organized into a digital web, he prepares to make it public through multiple channels. And here's where Elle's genius really shows itself. He knows that if he just dumps everything at once, the story would become too big too fast, and it'll be easier for the general public to dismiss it as a
the quicker something goes, the quicker it loses traction. Facts.
Conspiracy. Plus, mainstream news
like
outlets would get too many shutdown calls from their powerful friends. So L does something counterintuitive. When he's ready to release it, he intentionally leaves out the names of the most powerful people. The initial release focuses entirely on Epstein's trafficking and blackmailing ring, how it operates, how long it had been running, and how girls were recruited at schools. The web mentions that powerful people were involved. It has to, just to explain the scale, but it doesn't name them. Again, this is to simply make sure that the initial wave of coverage focuses on the crime itself rather than the politics of naming names. The media runs with it. Within 20 hours, the story stops being a local scandal and becomes global. And that's when L makes his second move. He sends anonymous emails to the rivals of every compromised official he's identified, and he sends them the full web. He just gives them the truth and trusts that enough of them, for enough different reasons, will act. Some will act because they have a moral compass. Some will act because they see a massive political advantage. And some will act simply because they're terrified of being implicated themselves. But even after that, L is just getting started. The next step is going directly after the names on Epstein's list. L anonymously sends a highly sanitized, encrypted message to a select few of the most powerful people on that list. Specifically, the ones he deduced were only there for business leverage. Since they were there for business, it's easier for them to talk their way out of the truly messed up stuff. So L's message to them is simple. Mr. Anonymous has all the blackmail material, and they have to cooperate now, or it's a declaration of war. This is how L creates absolute paranoia to fracture the network from the inside. As much as L wants to destroy the system, he also wants to win his personal game against Epstein. And to do that, he first has to make Epstein a liability that the system he built can no longer afford to protect. Now, remember how I mentioned that L is all three of the top 3 detectives in the world? That's not public information. To the public, the number 2 detective, Geraldo Coyle, and the number 3, Deneuve, are completely different people. It's a layer of anonymity that gives him 3 different lives to play with. Another thing to keep in mind is that the web L creates...
y'all not hearing him though, right? If he's 3 different people, then there's no shot of just like putting one's life at risk over the other. Or like, they like, oh, we gonna put red dots on him. You can't, because you got to put red dots on 2 other people, but you don't know that. Yo. Okay, that's pretty sick. That's pretty sick.
Isn't omniscient. He doesn't have every single piece of evidence yet. He only has what he's seen or deduced. The real, incriminating evidence only starts pouring in once the story becomes a global incident. Once every major news outlet is on it, the momentum moves faster than anyone can pay to make it stop. This is where L makes his move as Deneuve. He publicly announces that he was the one who leaked the web, and to protect himself, he reveals that he's created a dead man's switch. If he fails to check in once a day, a final, unencrypted version of the entire Epstein network file will be automatically released to every major news outlet and law enforcement agency on the planet. He makes it clear to everyone who is complicit that killing him only makes it worse. And while this looks like an ultimatum, it's actually pure smokescreen to further crack the network. You see, Epstein knows L is behind this because everything started falling apart the moment L entered the chat. However, Epstein's acquaintances, the powerful men backing him, have a different idea. They are not going to go down with him, especially when they realize they can simply launder their crimes through Epstein. And L knows exactly what they're thinking. In his room, he breaks down how Epstein's only utility to his backers was his ability to operate in the shadows. That utility is now gone. He's become a blindingly bright point of light in a scandal that threatens to engulf them all. And because of that, they won't protect him anymore. They'll make him the scapegoat and hope that his conviction calms the public outcry. And it works. Within a month of L getting involved, Epstein is convicted. And L doesn't stop there either. Over the next few months, he gradually releases information about the other offenders one by one, and keeps the entire network in a state of terminal paranoia. Naturally, once it becomes clear that Deneuve would keep leaking information, regardless of whether he is dead or alive, the hits start getting called in. Multiple contracts are put out on both L and Deneuve. This is where one of them seeks out the help of the world's second best detective, Geraldo Coyle. And of course, that is also L. To create a false sense of security, L uses his Geraldo Coyle persona to stage the deaths of both L and Deneuve. It creates a massive wave of public public outrage. But the people who hired Coyle are satisfied, but they're wrong. As more arrests are made and the power shifts to the clean counterparts Elle identified earlier, the old guard begins to lose their grip. Still, many offenders remain untouched because, as a certain student in Japan would say, this world is rotten. And speaking of that student, this is where things peak. About half a year after Elle visited that island, Light Yagami picks up the Death Note. At this point, the Epstein list is public knowledge. It's the biggest story in the world. So after Light tests the notebook, he starts writing the names of every offender on that list. He strikes his classic pose, looks out over the city and says to himself, this world is rotten, and those who are making it rot deserve to die. Someone has to do it, so why not me?
His
By
writing
the end
is
of
this
2006,
fire?
the Epstein network was neutralized.
His writing
Heart
is
attacks
this
for those
fire?
who were already on trial. Car accidents, overdoses, apparent suicides. One by one, the names on the list drop dead. Epstein's actual backers, the ones for whom he was doing the blackmailing, watch in frozen terror as everything they've built over decades now dies for no explainable reason. Finally, from an unknown location, Elle watches the news as a reporter announces yet another unexplained heart attack of a high-profile figure. He reaches for a sugar cube as he tries to make sense of it. Someone is cleaning up Epstein's mess with a power that Elle doesn't understand. This leads us into a version of Elle versus Light that we've never seen before, because this time Elle may just agree with Light, or should I say Kira.
Okay, that's dope. That's dope. Okay, but that is Could Elle Catch Epstein by Anime Addicts. If you want to see more, please go leave a like and subscribe for them. If you want to see more from me, please leave a like and subscribe for me. And with that being said, God bless.